Mimi nilikuwa mwadhiriwa. I think mimi ndio nilikuwa mdogo siku hiyo 1990. Nilishikwa kutoka Machakos bus station and nilishikwa kwa ajili tulionekana tukiwa na Rumba Kinuthia and Advocate. Tulikuwa naye pale group cinema. Na ndio nikaletwa hapa. Hapo nakwambia hata heri kwa shetani. Hapo ni pambaya. Namwambia hapo ni pambaya. Ukiwekwa hapa nafikiri wale wameingia hapa wamejionea. Na saa hiyo hakuna kitu uko nayo, unatolewa nguo zote. You are naked. Hata suruali ya ndani waliachwa naye. Sikuenda naye. Waliachwa naye hapa. Na ile mateso yuko na kupigwa huku. Nilikula siku ya samba.
I miss my father a lot. I miss him very much. You know, people think my father, he was a great man. He used to fight for human rights. He was my father. His jokes, you know, how we used to watch football together. All the way, me and him were very alike, very stubborn, both of us. And it was, we used to argue a lot. But I wish I could get to know my father too as an adult, because I think I missed out a lot. Him being in jail, we didn't spend a lot of time together. And when he went to Sweden, he left us here, so we missed out very many years together.
Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving deep into a haunting chapter of Kenya's history, the Nyayo House torture chambers. This infamous location, hidden in plain sight, symbolises the brutal repression faced by countless Kenyans during the regime of President Daniel Arap Moi. Join us as we explore the dark secrets of Nyayo House, the stories of its survivors, and the ongoing quest for justice and remembrance. We'll also discuss how this history continues to impact Kenya today.
Put with the needles, pins, yeah? Your testicles are tied, you are hit. My friend, you know, I can't relate them because pain belongs to the bearer. You can't understand my pain. So when I came out of prison, I didn't stop it. In fact, I became more of a handliner than before I was arrested.
Nyayo House was constructed in the early 1980s, initially intended as a government office building. However, it became notorious for its basement torture chambers, where political dissidents were detained and tortured. The planning for Nyayo House began in 1973, with construction starting in 1979, just a year after Moi took power. The building was completed in 1983 at a cost of approximately Shh 220 million. Originally named Nairobi House, it was renamed to reflect Moi's political slogan, Nyayo, which means footsteps in Swahili. Notable figures such as Raila Odinga and Koigi Wamwere were among those who suffered unimaginable horrors within its walls. Odinga described the psychological manipulation that escalated into violence, stating, "First, it is fairly friendly. Then they become more intimidating, until you finally give in."
The tears from the torture chambers are still running, as you can tell from the handkerchief that never leaves my hand. For years, I was not allowed to speak with other inmates. In fact, for 60 straight years, I did not sleep on a bed. For months on end, I was either held incommunicado, in solitary confinement, or handcuffed and in transit to the next prison or detention camp.
The chambers at Nyayo House were not merely places of detention, they were designed for systematic and brutal torture. Survivors recount harrowing experiences of being subjected to extreme physical and psychological abuse. For many, these experiences left lasting scars that continue to affect their lives today. Detainees were often kept in small, cramped cubicles measuring about 2.5 meters long and 2 meters wide. These soundproof rooms were designed to isolate victims while they endured horrific treatment. Survivors have described being submerged in water for prolonged periods or subjected to electric shocks as part of their interrogation. Wahome Mutahi, A playwright who was tortured there remarked that a simple apology from Moy would mean a lot. He said, "It would do some good if people like him came out and said, 'Sorry, it happened.'" His words resonate with many who seek acknowledgement for their suffering.
I think we are going to forgive them. Because even if we don't forgive them, it will continue hurting us. We forgive them, but you are not going to forget. And if they are found to be guilty of what they did to us, because that is one is obvious, because we have got living testimonies and evidence, they should face the law. If I get something to sustain my family at this age or at this stage, I'm ready to go back to school and say I sacrificed about my 3 or 4 years to see whether things are going to work well. This is Division 2 by then, and this is my A-level performance. There's no way I failed. I told you earlier, I was pursuing a career in human and economic geography. I think it is with the bitterness when we remember what happened to us. But now, because of the government interfering with my life at my prime of my age, I'm what I am now.
The methods employed in these chambers were both varied and brutal. Survivors have reported being beaten with sticks, whipped with electric cables, and subjected to sleep deprivation. Some detainees were forced to listen to loud music for hours on end to disorient them. Others faced psychological torture, including threats against their families or being forced to witness the torture of fellow inmates. For instance, one survivor recounted how he was blindfolded and taken to a room where he was beaten mercilessly. "They would ask me questions about my political affiliations," he recalled. "When I didn't answer the way they wanted, the beatings would intensify." This cycle of violence was designed not just to extract information, but to instill fear in anyone who dared oppose the regime. The interrogators at Nyayo House were often described as ruthless. Many were trained in counterinsurgency tactics and employed psychological manipulation alongside physical torture. They would play mind games with detainees, alternating between kindness and brutality to break their spirits. The impact of these tortures extended beyond the individuals detained. Families of victims faced stigma and hardship as well. Many detainees were breadwinners. Their absence plunged families into poverty. Some families never learned what happened to their loved ones, leading to a lasting sense of loss and uncertainty. One survivor shared how his family was left destitute after his detention. "My wife struggled to feed our children while I was away. When I returned, I was a shell of my former self." This illustrates how the repercussions of state violence ripple through communities.
The credit is given to the people, not to the leaders. It is the common man who was in Kamkunj who turned to the president. And that's why we are giving you the power to you, so that no one just sits on you. You elect him, and when it's no good, you remove him through the ballot paper.
In recent years, many survivors have come together to share their stories publicly, seeking justice and recognition for the atrocities they endured. Organisations advocating for human rights have worked alongside these survivors to document their experiences and push for accountability. Survivors like Wachira Wahera have become vocal advocates for victims' rights since their release from Nyayo House. Waheri emphasises that you don't forget your torturers, highlighting how these memories shaped their lives even decades later. As we reflect on these stories, it's crucial to remember that each number represents a human being, a life affected by state-sanctioned violence. The legacy of Nyayo House serves as a stark reminder of the importance of human rights advocacy and the need for ongoing vigilance against abuses of power.
When I was asked, have I ever been beaten with mob justice? I said, no. Today you will face it. So it was the beating as I tried to maintain my foot there, stopped a bit, told me, come up, put your one finger down, start going round. You go clockwise, anti-clockwise. clockwise, anti-clockwise, until you start feeling dizzy. You go down again. Now it's when you lie and they want to do the work on you. So that happened to me.
Judge, it wasn't until February 2003 that the public was allowed a glimpse inside these chambers. The new government opened the doors to reveal the horrors that lay within, sparking outrage and demands for justice. The Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission was established to investigate human rights violations, including those at Nyayo House. In its findings, it recommended that these chambers be preserved as a national monument to educate future generations about Kenya's past. In June 2024, survivors filed a lawsuit demanding unrestricted access to Nyayo House and its conversion into a national monument. Their fight is not only for acknowledgement, but also for healing and closure.
I, Kenneth Stanley Gino Matiba, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the President and people and to the President of Kenya and
the legacy of Nyayo House continues to influence Kenyan society today. Survivors advocate for remembrance as a means of preventing future atrocities. As Raila Odinga poignantly stated, "This was our Auschwitz, a history we need to preserve." Despite progress since Moi's regime ended, concerns about human rights violations persist in Kenya. The struggle for justice continues as many victims feel their stories remain unheard. Wachira Wahere has been at the forefront of activism for victims' rights since his release from Nyayo House. He emphasises that you don't forget your torturers, highlighting how these memories shape their lives even decades later.
I miss him very much. You know, people think my father, he was a great man. He used to fight for human rights. He was my father. His jokes, you know, how we used to watch football together. All the way, me and him were very alike, very stubborn, both of us. And it was, we used to argue a lot. But I wish I could get to know my father too as an adult, because I think I missed out a lot. Him being in jail, we didn't spend a lot of time together. And when he went to Sweden, he left us here, so we
conclude our exploration of Nyayo House, it's crucial to remember the lessons learned from this dark chapter in history. The fight for justice is ongoing. It's a reminder that vigilance is necessary to protect human rights. If you found this video informative or moving, please like, share and subscribe for more content on important historical topics. Let's keep the conversation going. What are your thoughts on how societies can heal from such painful legacies? Share your comments below.